All right, ready to watch? Ready to check out Carl Benjamin here, man?
Of course, man. Of course.
All right, let's check out Sargon of Akkad. Got it?
I'm quite old, and in the early days of the internet, it was a wild west. It was scary, and it was generally understood that you didn't use your real name for anything, and so you would use a pseudonym. And I happen to be a history fan. I happen to enjoy historical figures and stories, and so I just used Sargon of Akkad as my sort of screen name because everyone had their own, and you end up taking it from platform to platform just so you don't have to remember a different login and a different password. And so when I signed up to YouTube, it was just no different. I just was like, oh, okay, I was, didn't think anything of it. I never thought I was ever going to produce a YouTube video. And then something like 3 years later, I was just a bit frustrated about things. So I recorded a very, very low quality video, put it up online, and I started getting views. And then suddenly I've got 500,000 subscribers, and then suddenly I've got 900,000 subscribers, and suddenly I'm in the news, and suddenly I'm like, why didn't I just use my real name? Because the thing is, the political space wasn't really there on YouTube when I started.
It was a fast-moving, evolving thing, and you caught the wind of, this developing moment.
By complete accident.
Yeah, to my mind as well, in those early years of YouTube, it was actually quite a kind of atheisty dominated space. That was where a lot of the new atheists discovered each other and started hosting these quite skeptical channels. Was that kind of the vibe?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Someone made this point recently. They were playing clips from like 2009, 2010 of atheists back then, and they're just bragging about how they've taken over the internet and they've taken over social media and they've taken over YouTube, and Christians are all running, and people are just like, how's that working out for you guys now? How's that working out? But yeah, it did seem to be the vibe generally seemed to be atheism seemed significantly like a much stronger force back in like 2008, 2009, 2010 on YouTube. Now, what a pathetic, weak little insignificant thing it is.
Time of your channel?
It wasn't the vibe of my channel. I just presupposed all of those things, really. Right. I was a fan of Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and things like that. And I didn't come from a religious background in any way.
You weren't kicking against anything in that?
No. So
here's what it sounds like, and we'll let him continue. But it sounds like he's a fan of all these guys and he just agrees with them. So he wasn't like aggressively going, promoting the new atheist stuff because he's just okay. It's obviously. So you don't need to fight over it.
While I agreed with all of the sort of materialistic atheist arguments that I'm making, I was just a product of late modernity. And so everyone has those sort of presuppositions baked into them, and they realize that I'm not.
You ended up kind of becoming, though, somewhat part of that milieu. And I remember there was some kind of an episode, and I wrote a book called The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God, where I sort of the first chapter traces the rise and fall, arguably, of new atheism. And the way in which that movement, after a sort of honeymoon period, when everyone said, yes, God doesn't exist and religion's bad for you, they then started to disagree over all kinds of social issues. And I remember one particular moment that I heard about and watched when you had a big kind of fallout with another atheist at the, what was it, the Mythicist convention or something?
Yeah, the Mythicist Milwaukee convention. Well, so the atheist movement had...
Wait, mythicist? Jesus mythicists?
What?
There was a convention of... Cause I don't know what you mean by mythicist, because you can be a mythicist about various things. If there was an entire conference for Jesus mythicists, that's like terrible. But it's weird. I remember vaguely hearing something about this, but I don't think I ever watched the footage. But I think he says someone stormed the stage getting ticked off at him. Well, let's see.
Well, wait a minute. Mythicist Milwaukee is the former name of a non-profit atheist secular organization founded in Milwaukee, Wisconsin by Sean Frasick and Antonio Fritz Blandon in January 2013. Wait for it. After viewing the film Zeitgeist, the movie, directed by Peter Joseph, which claimed that today's Western religions are derived from ancient sun and nature worshippers. Seriously, man?
Again, this is we pointed this out a million times, but it's like you'll get these guys, we're the champions of reason, and we're the champions of logic, and we're the champions of facts, and we only believe what's been proven. And then they'll run out and defend like the most idiot, and they'll just mindlessly go along with something they saw in a stupid video and be ready to defend that to the death. And it's like they've never thought through anything, they've never studied anything. It's like, gosh, it's so dumb.
That movie, that film, the Zeitgeist movie was like, it came in at a time where the internet was just getting started on a massive scale, and the people were very susceptible to just accepting any kind of nonsense that is online. So the film came out and started making a bunch of ridiculous, dumb claims, and people just absorbed all of them like sponges and believed it. And nowadays, everyone who knows a little bit of stuff knows that the whole film was just full of nonsensical propaganda nonsense. It was just nonsensical nonsense. But some people actually formed organizations based on that movie. So.
Yeah, there's that, and then you had the Jesus myth, or that Jesus never existed. It's like, I'm not your boss. I can't tell you, I can't make you not believe in something stupid. It's the fact that they will believe the stupidest things that are like a trillion miles. They would be laughed out of the room if they tried bringing this up among scholars. I mean, even atheist scholars. They would laugh you out of the room for holding to these positions. And yet these guys will claim to be the champions of facts and reason. This brain is Fort Knox. Nothing is in there except the pure gold of the truth. And they'll, like any idiot who says, Jesus never exists, they go, oh, you can't believe that. Gosh, so dumb. Anyway, so something happened. And someone stormed the stage, apparently ticked off at him. Let me back this up a few seconds because this is interesting.
Atheist at the what was it, the Mythicist convention or something?
Yeah, the Mythicist Milwaukee convention. Well, so the atheist movement had not very long after its sort of blooming been infected with woke postmodern identity politics, in particular feminism. And I didn't think this was actually the best way to conceive of male-female relationships and interactions. And so I was something of a heretic to the atheist movement.
You catch that?
Which is an interesting place to arrive at, because, of course, there were definitely deep religious undertones to the moral system that they're promoting.
Dude, you hear this?
No.
AP. This is exactly what Jordan Peterson was just saying. And yet you had people like Danny going, oh, well, are you a Christian or not? So the actual claim of Jordan Peterson was everyone worships something. And if you take God out of your mental hierarchy and so on, something else is going to be on top. Something else is going to be on top. It's like, no, we don't. And here's Carl Benjamin saying that the whole movement had these religious undertones, and if you didn't agree to everything that the group was saying, you were deemed a heretic. You're a kind of heretic and so on. So check this out. Let's back this up a little bit. He was a heretic.
In particular, feminism. And I didn't think this was actually the best way to conceive of male-female relationships and interactions. And so I was something of a heretic to the atheist movement, which is an interesting place to arrive at, because, of course, there were definitely deep religious undertones to the moral system that they're promoting. And the Mythicist conference was a confrontation, finally, whose time had come, because for a long time, they simply just blocked us out of conversation because, of course, well, no, we've got the reins of power. Why would we want to engage with you? We'd only stand to lose something. But our influence kept growing. And so eventually it came to the point where I was like, okay, well, we'll sit down and talk. And Thomas Smith was not happy that I wasn't prepared to be browbeaten by progressive.
This was the sort of opponent you were speaking to.
That's correct. Right. And he ended up storming off the stage.
Yes, there were some quite chaotic scenes, I heard.
Yeah, I didn't think I even went that hard on him, really. But I just didn't agree with the moral framework he was proposing, and he had a really difficult time dealing with that. Yeah. So,
hey, that's interesting. Hey, AP, a little side note, AP. Guys, everyone, look. Is it just me, or does that actually look like a cool way to rock a cross?
I know. I was just thinking of that. I thought I should attach it to my beard.
Isn't that cool? It looks cooler than wearing it as a necklace.
Yeah.
You should come up with
But then
something where you don't actually have a necklace. It just like attaches to your beard or something like that. Dude,
should
seriously,
attach
start
to
up
my
a new thing.
beard. Yeah.
Start up a new thing. It looks cooler, and that could be your offshoot of the Orthodox Church that you start and become the Pope of.
Well, I already started. I'm starting a movement called Orthofarianism. So it also comes with Orthodox Christian reggae music. So yeah,
That is cool. That is cool.
You make now in retrospect of that whole sort of new atheist movement?
They didn't kill belief in Christianity, they buried it. They were essentially kicking an open door.
You guys get that? Kicking an open door? What's he mean? They didn't kill belief in Christianity. They buried it. So the killing was already done. So in other words, other people just culturally, especially in the UK, people stopped taking Christianity seriously. Tons of people did. And the new atheists just came along and kind of took advantage of the situation. That's what it sounds like he's saying. That they're kicking an open door. The door's already open there. It's already been done. It's already been done. And they're like, oh, we will stop Christianity, when it was kind of already done.
it was an unusually long break that he just took there when he was asked the question.
Why can't you let the man think about how to state whatever he's trying to say?
We don't do thinking.
I mean, you remember when I ordered the McMutta, at McDonald's, the dude paused for like 30 seconds.
That's true.
He's trying to get the right response. What's the problem
The
with that?
awkward silence there.
Yeah, it was. I thought about just leaving it as this awkward silence, but I put something on the screen because it's like 30 seconds to something pause. And it's funny when I'm sitting there because I'm like, should I say something? Should I clarify? It's like, no, I'm just going to sit here until he says something. So I just sit there. Classic.
The civilization had long become secular, and since the boomers, really, the boomers were genuinely quite a secular generation, and just found themselves choosing not to believe for whatever reason. And so by the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, when you had Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris and Dennett having arguments with the religious right, they had a kind of rootedness that the religious right didn't have in the popular culture. And so they could draw upon a set of everyone knows this sort of assumptions. And so, and even now though, I look back and I think, God, their arguments were terrible. Absolutely. I mean, I saw a clip of Sam Harris just from about a year or two ago saying, well, I look up into the heavens and I don't see God, so where is he? And it's like, Sam, after all of this time, how have you not realized that the concept of God is outside of the material universe? Like, I'm an atheist, but your argument is just bad, right? And you fail to understand. But how did
that's funny because you had the same reaction among like actual atheist and agnostic philosophers who were saying back then, like, guys, these are the stupidest the arguments of the new atheists, the champions of the new atheism are the stupidest arguments we've ever seen. It's embarrassing how stupid they are. And yet at the popular level, people were eating them up. Michael Ruse said, and that is an extreme, that I think he died. Did Michael Ruse die? Hang on 1 second. I'm friends with the last graduate student he ever took.
You don't even know if your friend died or not.
Michael Ruse, not my friend. Oh yeah. He died last year. He died November of last year.
Hey, is your friend dead? I don't know. But
insanely intelligent dude, Michael Ruse. It's funny. My friend said that in his classes, Michael Ruse was I forget if he called himself an atheist or an agnostic, but my friend said that he would teach his classes and he would tell the students, he said, hey, a lot of you are atheists and you look back and you think that you're so much smarter than people in the past. And you would look back at people like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and think, look at these idiots. They believed all this stuff. He goes, none of you is even close. You're not in the same realm with these guys intellectually. These guys would run circles around any of you in a heartbeat. You have no idea how smart these guys were. So anyway, it's actually cool that this was coming from an atheist. But anyway, he said that reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins made him embarrassed to be an atheist because of how terrible the arguments were. But it's all the same thing. It's like even like very well educated atheists can see how stupid these arguments are. And yet at the popular level, you'll have all these atheists running around claiming these things, and they think that they're the smart ones when they're believing some of the dumbest arguments ever offered by anyone in the history of forever. It's amazing stuff. And here, it's why it's interesting. Carl Benjamin, he's like, I'm looking at your argument. Your argument is stupid. Like, anyway, fun times. Glad we're getting past the new atheism.
Just right at the time, let him get away with these arguments.
Well, I think there were some people trying not to let him get away with it, but sometimes it's the person with the loudest megaphone that you tend to
just as an atheist, I'm kind of embarrassed by it.
I want to bring in Bethel in a moment as my resident Christian. To
AP, you like chess? Why don't you play Bethel and see what happens to you?
Okay.
I bet she will absolutely destroy and humiliate you. Right. Sending you back, you'll be like, I'm going back to Turkey because she just destroyed me in chess.
Right.
I have a little bit of an engagement on these issues, but I do.
If I recall correctly, she's one of the people who can play you without a chessboard in front of her. You hear me?
That's fine. Yeah.
She doesn't need to see the board. You can just call out your moves to her. You can say, king's pawn to blah, 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 blah. And she can just visualize everything in her head and play you just in her head. It's weird.
Before we do get to that, Carl, even though you are still an atheist, I sense that you've undergone a sort of conversion to arguably the value of Christian faith. We hear at ARC, which is very much based around this idea of rediscovering the Christian foundations of the West and so on. And perhaps the figure most influential in that has been someone like Jordan Peterson in your experience. So I've just been interested in hearing what that journey has been for you, even though you don't accept the supernatural claims, where you've landed regarding religion.
I'm not. I suppose I would put myself in the agnostic camp at this point, rather than a hard atheist, because there are arguments.
Imagine going from atheist to agnostic.
It's pretty lame.
Huh. Never heard that one before on someone's journey.
Who does that?
Yeah, who does that?
Religious, and not just Christian either, the religious side makes, that do necessitate an answer. Like, fundamentally, the materialist conception is based on something coming out of nothing, which is a very difficult thing to square for anyone who's concerned about logical consistency on how they feel the universe was created. So
I actually want to go back because he just made an important point there, which is it's refreshing to see it coming from, in this case, an agnostic, going from atheism to agnosticism. What he just said there, you've got all these guys who will say, we're the skeptics. Again, these are the same people who will believe any idiotic nonsense they saw in a video somewhere or in a documentary. Oh, what I thought in Dawkins, it must be the truth. Or how could it be in a video? Right? But they're the skeptics, and just claiming to be the skeptics, when you see they are completely gullible whenever anyone on their side tells them something, and then they're dogmatically opposed to anything supernatural, and they think this makes them a skeptic. It's like, no, if you're really a skeptic, you should be a skeptic of any sort of claim that seems really, really far-fetched. But guess what? That would include some atheistic explanations for lots of things. So how we got a universe, why the universe ended up finely tuned, how life originated. Keep in mind, guys, saw an interview with Richard Dawkins on Piers Morgan, and Richard Dawkins says, we may eventually find out how life formed. It's like, wait a minute. When I was in high school, you guys told me you had this stuff figured out. And now here we are decades later, and it's, well, we may eventually know and understand how life forms. It's like, okay, so you don't know. And that's not the biggest problem in the world, but it means you should be open to being wrong. If you have no clue, if in spite of all your research, you still can't figure it out and you have no explanation, you should be open to the idea about being wrong about things, but they'll just take it for granted. Nope, this is how it happened. It must have happened. It must have just happened by chance and so on. So anyway, formation of life, consciousness, and so on. if you're actually a skeptic and you want to be skeptical of the theistic explanations, fine. But you should also be skeptical when they say, yeah, just matter and motion can give rise to human consciousness, or, time and chance and enough particles interacting with each other and you can get light. You should be skeptical of those kinds of things too. And people just aren't. So what he just said right there, that the reason he considers himself an agnostic and not a hard atheist is because atheists still have some serious issues to deal with, like how do you get a universe from nothing and so on. Anyway, so that's good. That's consistency, and he calls out the issue specifically in terms of consistency. So check this out.
Necessitate an answer. Like fundamentally,
Let me back up a little.
There are arguments that the religious, and not just Christian either, the religious side makes that do necessitate an answer. Like fundamentally, the materialist conception is based on something coming out of nothing, which is a very difficult thing to square for anyone who's concerned about logical consistency on how they feel the universe was created. So the question of the Big Bang and all that, it just kicks the can further down the road. Okay, well, what came before that? Started that? What's going on? So there are lots of things. It's not Jordan Peterson for me, actually, who, but I appreciate for a lot of people, he has been instrumental, and that's good. Because I actually do think a revival of the Christian heritage of the West is a good idea. The problem is, I think that it's kind of like asking a bunch of disabled people to just stand up and start walking.
You guys catch that? He said he thinks that a Christian revival is a good thing. And he said, but it's kind of like telling a bunch of people who've never walked or disabled to get up and walk. It's like how do you jumpstart your brain into thinking in Christian terms after you spent your entire life not thinking that way or thinking that way is stupid? It's an interesting little problem.
If you haven't nurtured that part of you, I think it kind of shrivels up and dies. And so this is why I'm not adverse to the idea of a religious awakening. I just don't feel with it, right? But for me, it was actually, I don't want to be cliche about this, but I really liked C.S. Lewis, actually. I read Chesterton and found him a bit of a bore, to me.
Oh my goodness.
Chesterton's a very strange figure because about half of what he says in his books and what I read is, I'm like, God, that is a profound insight. And then about the other half is just like, that's obvious nonsense. It's obvious nonsense.
So he's saying he loves C.S. Lewis. With Chesterton, he's saying half of it he reads and thinks, brilliant, profound insight. And the other half, come on, that's nonsense. I have a similar reaction to Chesterton in that he's so good at showing how he can make it reminds me of what I just said about the British, the posh British accent, and that Chesterton, but he'll just say it like in writing, not with an accent, but he can make anything sound brilliant, even if he was saying something that's not. And the other issue with Chesterton, sometimes I'll read Chesterton and he'll spend like 3 pages making a point, and I'll be like, you could have said that in 2 sentences, but you dressed it up in all this awesome rhetoric and so on. But yeah, there is a difference between Chesterton and C.S. Lewis. And so, I don't know. I like Chesterton. All right.
And I like the sort of stuffiness of Chesterton. Like, so as an aesthetic, I like that. But C.S. Lewis is the guy.
Yeah. So C.S. Lewis famously said, a young atheist can never be too careful about his reading. So it's fun to hear that you're...
Yeah. I like I said, I didn't want to be too cliche about it, but he makes some perceptive insights that are actually important.